when you can have compassion for yourself, it just helps you take your power back because now the money doesn't have the power or the other person. You do.
Welcome to the Divine Hangout. I'm your host, Hillary Jubilee. It is my intention that when you listen to this podcast, you experience an increase in peace, abundance, and divine miracles in your life experience. If you love all things spirituality, wellness, healing, manifestation, and miracles, you are in the exact right place at the exact right time. Let's enter the portal together. Welcome back to the Divine Hangout. It's Hillary, and today I'm joined by Anita Mae. She is the podcast host of the Manifesting Money podcast and a manifesting money mindset coach. And I am actually so excited to speak with Anita today. Thank you for joining me.
I'm excited to be here too. It's been a long time coming.
Yes. So I would like if you could just start maybe by just starting with your history of your upbringing and how you were raised and what, like, do you have certain money beliefs that you had to overcome? Were you raised in any type of certain spirituality and how that shifted and changed over time?
Ooh, wait, I've never been asked this before, so this is so exciting. So my upbringing, I'm actually from Nebraska. I don't know if you know this about me. Okay, I have to put it out there because if there's anybody from Nebraska listening, they're gonna be like, "No way, I'm from there." So, yeah, I grew up in a really small town in Grand Island, Nebraska, and so there's five of us kids all in one house. And so my parents were never together, but they weren't like married. They just separated when I was a baby. So I have a twin sister and then an older sister. We all have the same uh, mom and dad, and then my little brother and my little sister have the same dad, different mom, but we all grew up in the same house. So my like upbringing was like one split between the two houses, like mom on the weekends. And an interesting story, I think you'll really appreciate this, is that I was supposed to go with my dad, and my twin sister was supposed to go with my mom. That's so weird to me. So, yeah, in our house.
But you didn't.
What's that?
But you didn't. You went together?
Nope, we went together. But I just thought that was super interesting because I was like, oh, I wonder if that like rooted something of like that fear of being separated from my twin, just
Mm.
things from there. But anyway, so our household was like my mom was very Christian and kind of more by the book, and a lot of, I would say, like scarcity mindset of not having enough because she was a single mother. And eventually she got married too, but there was still like a lot of the scarcity and then the unknown. And then my dad, on the other hand, he always had money, but he would like have it and then run out, have it and then run out. So it's like we were being abundant. We'd go do fun stuff. And when we went out to eat, like all of us kids would bring a friend, but then we'd still have like trouble paying the bills. So there'd be a lot of like situations like that. So um, growing up, that's how I remember like a lot of ups and downs. And when I say downs, like just like physically feeling the hardships from my parents on both ends, and maybe even being the communicator in between. And again, my mom was Christian, and she had been sober for 30 plus years. And then my dad was the exact opposite. And so like we would go to Catholic church with my dad, but not really understanding where we're going, like not feeling like we even belong there because we didn't know anything that they were doing or teaching. And then with my mom's side, it was like we were just going to church a lot, but like we didn't know why. And if we didn't go or we said something wrong or we did something wrong, like it was kind of like don't do that. And it wasn't only like with my mom. I think it was mostly like it more comes from like my mom's parents of having that need to like do things a certain way or believe a certain way. So I would say like the Christian community was like more familiar to me as I got older because I would leave and come back, but there wasn't like a basic understanding of like who God is, what the Bible is, or like why we prayed. It was just something that we did.
Cool. So with the beliefs about money growing up, what like how you had to overcome those obviously to be where you are at today. So like in a nutshell, like how did you begin with kind of overcoming those, things from childhood?
Yeah, I think it starts with awareness. And so even now, like when I do the work, I think it's overcoming a lot of the beliefs, but it's also really looking at all the gifts that you have because of those situations too. And that was something I didn't really tap into until like maybe a year after I had been doing the work on my beliefs. Like at first it was like, oh my gosh, my parents did this and my parents did that. But like then you just have to understand that they were doing the best that they could. And once you have that understanding and just compassion, like you're like, oh my gosh, like it's always been very easy for me to make money. And that's because of my dad. And then with my mom, it's like there's always an opportunity. Like she was always going from job to job to job, but it was never a question whether I could get a job or not. Um, and just be supported too, because she was always supported through groups or other people. And so like I think a lot of that actually came with me too, of like being able to ask for help, receive help, seeing what it was like when my stepdad came in and like having that example. And then my dad has always had his own business as well. So I could physically go to him and ask questions of like, what do I do when people don't pay me or they don't think that I'm not charging enough, things like that. And so again, it's first started with all of the awareness of like, okay, what are the things that happened that made me believe that I didn't have enough? Um, and it really just rooted from tiny things, really small things, like in the line at McDonald's, and I couldn't get like a big meal. I had to choose from the dollar menu, or at church, and I would see my mom give money. She'd give like a $20 bill, and I would get really angry because we didn't have enough money. And so, like, even going back to those times and digging into like my subconscious and asking myself the right questions, it helped me get super clear on like the things that happened that made me believe that, but also like again realize that that was just something that happened. Like there's times that I played at the park and I didn't have any subconscious beliefs about that. You know what I mean? So it's like trying to reprogram of like, oh, that was just something that happened instead of like, this is still repeating pattern. So just kind of neutralizing it instead of making it good or bad. It just was.
Instead of attaching the meaning to
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, I want to ask you about, I want you to talk about a little bit about intuition because I know you've moved
Yeah.
cities multiple times and also like the intuition, obviously, that you had to pivot your career and your podcast from a makeup podcast and a makeup artist to manifesting money. Like, how did that happen? Did you have an inner knowing at some point? Like, what triggered that?
I think it was kind of both. It's like I kind of had the inner knowing that it was going to happen. Like when I started working on my money mindset, but I just always had the belief of like, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. Like as if there was going to be a certain time of then I would be able to start talking about that. So I think that's the first time I've ever mentioned that too. So that was a really good question, by the way. Um, but yeah, I think I did know I was going to talk about it just because it was something so, I was so passionate about talking about. It was so easy for me. It was like I'm in a grocery store and like my whole brain is now reprogrammed of like, oh, subconscious belief. Oh, like, there's just so many things where I was like genuinely so excited and I would get out of my like to my car and I would just record a video just talking about it. And it was awkward and like, people in my audience, like, and when I say audience, I mean like my friends on Instagram and Facebook, they're like, okay. Or like everybody would look at it and nobody would say anything. And I was like, because you lucky you just want one person to be like, oh, I get that. So when I did start talking about it, it was kind of more only with people who were in the makeup industry because that's where I was comfortable. And so pretty soon I was talking about it and people were asking me, how to manifest money. And I'll never forget the time that I projected my own belief on somebody else. So I told her the same thing that I did. Write down the number, how much, when do you need it by, what do you believe is possible? And she was like, I think I can manifest $500 by Friday. And I was like, whoa, 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 let's start off small. Literally the next day, she manifested $500. I'll never forget it because I was like, oh, I projected my belief on her. And like my limiting beliefs, because in my brain, $500 was a lot, but $100 was easy. So it was like stuff like that was just happening so much. So I would like either talk about it on the podcast or just make those videos. And then when I got to the point where I knew it was time for me to rebrand, because people who aren't even makeup artists, like real estate agents, like the friend who texted me was a lifestyle or a life and fitness coach. Like it was nothing to do with makeup. And I was so stressed out about it. And I think it's really important to talk about this because I was like, I need new brand colors. I need new fonts. It's like I just was really giving all the external of why I couldn't do it. But actually, I got super clear on the fear of talking about manifestation. That's why I was procrastinating because I was scared to say, I'm the co creator. I was scared to be judged by my mom, mostly. And then I was scared to be judged by God. I was so scared by God. I was like, what if I get punished? What if I get zapped up or something? You know what I mean? There was just so many like subconscious fears of like stepping into that. And again, I'll never forget the moment when you like become conscious of the thought and I'm doing the dishes. It's like nothing that's ever like super spiritual. So it's just something that you're doing randomly throughout your day. And then I like stopped. And that's when I realized the belief. And I was like, I think I'm okay if that happens. And that's when your whole body just feels like it's like lifted, you know? And literally that same, if not that same week, maybe the next week is when all my social media blew up.
Wow. So as soon as you had the acceptance of yourself that if the worst thing happened, I would be
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then it all started flowing in. Wow. That is powerful. Um, One thing that you have said on your podcast before, I've been listening to you from at least like late 2022. I don't know exactly when, but um, as soon as I found your podcast, I started binging it because I just absolutely was
Oh,
drawn to you and loved your podcast. But yeah, you said multiple times in multiple different episodes, people are the biggest energy blocks. And when I heard that, I was like, it triggered me, and I was like, no, like this can't be like. I was in a really toxic
mm,
relationship at the time, and I wasn't admitting it to myself, and but I knew in the back of my head that it wasn't
mm.
okay. And yeah, that's something in that phrase just triggered something in me, and I was just like, maybe she's right in the back of my head. Like, and then I ended that relationship, and I'm just like, oh my God, like you're so right.
Oh, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
it's so powerful. Like literally you are the people you surround yourself with. So have you had to cut people out of your life and from knowing that?
Yeah, and it comes in different phases, but again, thank you for sharing that, and thank you even like again because you know people listen to the podcast, but you don't know. It's not like this every day,
Yeah.
you know? So it's
Yeah.
like even to know that I wasn't physically there of like you can release this person that and I don't ever think it's me. I think it's God, universe, source talking through me.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's why I talk so fast too, because I'm like channeling. But yeah, just to know that those seeds are getting planted because they're probably hearing it through multiple sources, and it just all it really needs is like the right vibration of like, oh, that clicks. So if so you're listening to this right now and something triggers you or your body feels you get chills or eyes start to get watery, pay attention to that. But to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of people where I had to cut off in the beginning. But when I say it comes in phases, like in the beginning, it was like, no, no. Like once I became conscious of it, I was just cutting people off like crazy. You ever see that thing on TikTok that was like when you cut so many people off and now you're like lonely or whatever? that, that's how I was in the beginning. I was just like, you're the reason, why a lot of stuff isn't happening. But, and it did help in the beginning because you really just have to know what your beliefs are opposed to what other people's beliefs are. So if you're just now starting to like really set those beliefs, it is essential for you to like have that time and space. And for me personally, it was mostly just talking to my sisters on the phone all the time, my mom all the time. There was like no boundaries. And that was the second part. The second part, which went deeper, was like, okay, learning how to hold space for people opposed to like, okay, this is toxic. I don't want to talk about this. Because when you really think about it, like a lot of times we have these deep rooted subconscious fears and beliefs. And all you really want is someone to say, like, I'm sorry that you're going through that. But I didn't know that. And my sister, my twin sister, was actually the one who told me this because when her best friend passed away because of due to suicide, I didn't know how. I literally had no idea what to say. And obviously, there's a lot of emotions that come with that. Like, she's angry at me, not at me, but, I'm in the same room and there's tension, but it's really about something deeper. And so that's when I really started to learn of like, not to say like, he's in a better place, oh, well, good things will come from this. It was just like, I'm really sorry that that happened. But she physically had to tell me that's what she needed to hear. So I think that was really important. And then I started to learn how to physically hold space for people and just be that person of like, sometimes they do just need to vent, you know? But then the third level of it was like, okay, are they venting? Like, and now there's like no boundary. Because now I'm like, okay, I want to be here for you. I want to support you. But I literally only have 15 minutes. And I literally schedule calls with my family members now because I want them to know that like their time is important to me. And I don't just want to pick up because, oh my gosh, I got an answer, because then you can't give them the most undivided attention. I'm like texting, I'm like doing the dishes, and it's just a totally different vibration. So now my twin sister and I, we actually make notes of what we're gonna tell each other instead of texting each other right away. And it just kind of helps us have that healthier boundary too.
That's a cool idea to make notes instead of texting because obviously a phone call is more personable than sending a text. Um, so where do I want to go next? I'm gonna go back to money
Okay.
again. So what do you say to somebody who has dread or like a negative feeling around money when like an unexpected bill comes up? So they're trying to change their money paradigm, their money beliefs, but obviously that takes time sometimes. And so the physical evidence might be screaming in someone's face. And so what do you say like about like when actual physical or like the feeling of, negative feelings, like how do you deal with that? The feelings that come up along with that.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I'm gonna record myself saying this because actually I just got a video. Not a video, but like somebody went to one of our workshops the other day and then they got this huge unexpected bill and they're like, this is the exact opposite of what I wanted. And I can just
Yeah.
relate to that so much because when I first started doing this work, right, you're like things were, supposed to flip, and not get worse. But actually, a lot of people call it the quantum crumble of like
Mm.
everything like quote unquote falling apart. And 9 times out of 10, when you are breaking these really, really big beliefs, and I don't like to say it's a test because it's not a test. There's no right or wrong. If you're not going to get an A plus or an F, but I think it's an opportunity for us to like feel because that's what we're actually running from is feeling a certain emotion. So when you do get that bill, or for me personally, it's an email from someone I've been avoiding or a phone call, like what's coming up in your body. Where is it coming up in your body? Mine's like right here, my back, my left shoulder, and you literally just feel it. It is the most uncomfortable situation and feeling. But the more that you can like allow yourself to feel it instead of like push it away, which is my number one habit, is to like, okay, ignore the call. Oh, I didn't see the email. Sorry, I didn't know that you texted me. You know what I mean? And I'm saying this as in a place of like, I'm still working on this every single day. So when I do answer, or I do call them back, or I do email back, I have to tell myself, that's a big step, Anita. That's a big step. Because It's more about the little things that you're doing, because we think that when we pay it, then we're going to feel a different emotion. It's actually the opposite of like when you start to allow yourself to feel the emotion. It's almost like as if it comes like through you. It's like right here and then it goes, but you just have to do it so many times and it does take the time. And it usually comes up in different areas of your life too. So, for example, I did a lesson on boundaries the other day, and then it came up in all different areas of my life, and I'm like, wait, I don't want to teach you about this anymore. But yeah, when you are teaching it, you learn it twice, and usually it's coming up because you're allowing yourself to feel that. And what you realize is that when you do feel that, like you'll start to see things like the bill gets taken care of, or maybe you do manifest physical money, hard cash to pay it off, but now you have a new fear of like, oh, should I be more smart with this money? It's just the same process over and over again because you're never going to get dealt anything that you can't handle. And in the moment, it's so annoying to hear that. That's why I like to document every single second of the day. But I think for me personally, when I see somewhat of the light of like, oh, this is a cycle. This is why I was being shown that. It like feels 10 times lighter when I can at least kind of see what's going on or why. And just kind of helps me push through it and know it's much bigger than physical.
So whenever you feel that emotion, it's coming up, you're aware of it, and then you're feeling through it rather than shoving it down, because obviously that's unhealthy and can create disease in the body. So letting it go through you, which I love the wording that you use there. So what is an actionable step from that point? Like, are you then reconfiguring it in your mind? So you said like you're giving yourself praise and you're encouraging yourself for like taking the healing step. But then are you in that moment kind of reframing whatever belief is, or being aware of a belief and kind of just reframing it in your mind, or telling the story in a different way at that
I
point?
think at that point, it's mostly just acceptance all over again. Like, worst case scenario, literally, worst case
Mm,
scenario. If that happened,
mm,
would I be okay? I
mm.
think that is where your sweet spot is because anything else is just bonus. And so, like, and that goes extreme places. You know what I mean? Like, not only like I've had, fears about jail. I've had fears about like dying. I've had fears of losing people. But like, whatever is coming up for you is coming up for a reason. It might not be as extreme as mine, but I think just giving yourself permission to admit what you're thinking is like a really good place to start. Because if you're not being honest with yourself, then like you're not starting from zero. You're literally starting from up here. And that's why it keeps happening, is because you're not getting to the root.
And how does somebody get to the root?
Just again, going back to like, what am I scared of? Okay, going back to the example that someone messaged me, what if it does take all of the money from your account? Like, that's a really big bump. And just being able to say that and have compassion for yourself is huge, because that's what happens is that we're actually seeking that compassion from other people, but it's really what we're seeking from ourselves. Maybe you want your
Mm-hmm.
parents to say, I'm sorry. Maybe you want someone to apologize to you. Maybe someone who's done you wrong. But it's like when you can have compassion for yourself, it just helps you take your power back, because now the money doesn't have the power or the other person, you do. And it just, again, kind of helps you have a solid foundation. So now you can go to step two, or in my brain, it's step four, because where I'm at right now is step three of the 5-step process of breaking down a money block. So step four would be, okay, what would be the best case scenario? Everything gets paid, like I got a random settlement, you know what I mean? Things like that. And then you can be,
So what's 1 to 3 then?
yep. So one
What
is
does that?
awareness. What's the story
Okay.
that you're unconsciously saying? And I try to kind of bring it out almost again to that worst case scenario and going deeper of like, okay, if I don't pay the bill, that means that I won't have enough, or that, I don't know, my car will get repossessed. And so step two is like, okay, if your car gets repossessed, what does that mean about you? And so will that mean that I'm irresponsible? And so, like, when's the first time in your life that you ever felt irresponsible? Either with money or you've seen somebody, your parents, quote unquote, be irresponsible with money. So, me personally, going back to the times of like, why would we go out to eat with so many friends if we didn't pay our bills? Things like that of whatever's coming up for you personally. And then step three is feeling that emotion. It's okay to feel irresponsible. You can be irresponsible and still be loved and still be accepted. And again, it's like once you no longer have that attachment to that emotion, you can just feel it. Like, oh, I felt that for like 5 seconds. And now I feel responsible. You know what I mean? Now you can have the opposite effect.
Is that was step
Yep.
two?
So that was step or three. So step one,
Oh, three.
awareness.
Okay.
Step two, get to the root. Three, feel the emotion you're trying to avoid.
I got
Four,
it.
dream big. And then five
Dream big.
is the action, aligned action, and breaking that cycle.
Okay. Love that. You have a podcast episode on the fact that abundance is not just
Mm-hmm.
money. And could you talk about that a little bit? Like shifting from lack to abundance in every area, not just in the area of money.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one. It's my favorite. Because usually especially when you're going through this process, it's like your mind needs so much proof, like so much proof. And so like usually we only count things of like physical money manifesting. And when you do that, you're just like cutting yourself so short of like so many possibilities. So abundance might be abundance of people that you meet. Like, just imagine having like really amazing heart-centered conversations every single day. And I think that's something that I personally took for granted in the beginning. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forget that people don't get to have conversations like this all the time. So conversations, maybe opportunities. I think of like when I hear therapist or like, I guess I'm trying to think of like a more general role of like, I'll never be out of work because there's always so many people who need my help. It's like, wow, that's an abundance of opportunities, abundance of people to help, abundance of like places that you can go and opportunities. Like, it just kind of depends on your current mindset of is it just only tied to money and what is it specifically that you want more of?
Love that. I think that, do you know who Aaron Abke is?
He has blonde hair, right? No?
Um, it's like dark blonde. He's on YouTube. He's a
Okay, I do
YouTuber,
know who
and
he is,
he
but
he
my
has
in my brain his last name was different. So yeah.
okay. He has multiple videos on abundance, but he talks about like nature and how if you go outside in nature and there's an abundance of leaves on the tree and an abundance of sunshine and the sun comes up every day and you can count on that and just thinking of nature and how abundant nature is and how we're a part of nature and being connected to nature. And yeah, I really liked that kind of parallel.
I think
Yeah.
waterfalls are always like I'm like, this is literally so mind-boggling to me of how a waterfall just goes. It's like it's
Forever.
my favorite noise ever.
I love that. My mom actually built a pond in her yard, and there's a little waterfall in the pond, and it's such a beautiful sound.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Let's pivot to um your relationship with God.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you recently you recently came full circle and are now nurturing a new relationship with God. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I think it goes back to again my other fear of like talking about manifestation. And again, that's why I'm so grateful for all the conversations that I get to have with people who are either abundant mindset or not. Because I just feel like God talks to me through other people. And like this past year is my first time ever reading the Bible. Like I've flipped through the pages when they tell you to go, and I'm like, wait, what page is it? But I had no idea that there was an Old Testament and the New Testament in the Bible. Like, I'm telling you, I was so new to this. It was super frustrating because, I grew up in a Christian household, and it was like, I heard a lot about, like, Jesus or, you know, the Ten Commandments, but I just have so much fear around it because I didn't know what it was. And so, like, I think every single time that I've, like, had a relationship with God and I didn't, it was like me wanting to do things my own way, and then just hoping and praying that it's going to manifest the way that I want it to. And then it's like, okay, I'm tired of doing everything. I'm tired of figuring everything out. I'm tired of feeling like I needed to create everything. So like if I want to interview someone, it was like I would just go out and get it. But it just felt like this like cycle of like tying work to something that I want, and then there was just no magic there. You know what I mean? I missed the simpler times of like when I said I wanted a book and then someone would just so happen to give it to me. And so like every single time that I would start to hear my relationship with God, stuff like that would start to happen all over again. Where you know, like I'm at the airport and I was like, I'm gonna treat myself with a smoothie. And then I see somebody that I know, like in this exact moment that I'm in this line in a completely different area. Just things like that. I just felt more fulfilled. I felt like things weren't like as hard to get anymore. But that doesn't mean that it's not uncomfortable, because it's like every single day I'm waking up and I'm like, oh, I'm still worried about this. I'm still worried about that. But I like allow myself to have those like feelings and emotions. But I'm also like open to all the different ways that I can have a relationship with God. It's not just the Bible. Like when I go to church, I receive a message, whether it's the same church that I've been going to, or if it's a new one I want to go to, or if I want to go to a Baptist church, I can go to a Baptist. I can do whatever I want. And just really knowing that just gave me so much permission. And then being open to all different types of religions just also made me so excited. And just even seeing how it actually refers back to the universal laws of oneness, laws of cause and effect. And it just helped me understand of like, oh, so I just felt like God was talking just all these different languages, and we can interpret it in different ways if we're open to it.
I love that. One thing that you said just I resonated with was like being tired of doing it on your own, because when you are separate from whatever you want to call it, like some people, source, spirit, universe, whatever, when you feel like you're on your own and you're separate from that, it's exhausting, and like you're trying to force and fix things, and your little human ego mind is just trying to like bend things to your will, and like how is this going to happen, and worrying, and like yeah, the future, and it's just it's exhausting. So yeah, just the connection, the more connected you are to the source within and oneness, is I do find that things just work themselves out, and things you want to manifest just kind of happen on their own, and the more connected you are to that. So I want to ask you, do you meditate, and do you find that meditation is important for that in particular?
Yeah, I think it's both, because I actually use God, universe, source interchangeably. And sometimes when I pray, I say Jesus. Sometimes when I pray, I say the Lord. I just, you know what I mean? I think it's just whatever comes up for me most naturally. And it's different in different situations. So there's some things I'm giving up to the higher power. There's some things that I'm like calling all of my spirit guides, because I'm just so connected and I'm so grateful. Like some of the most traumatic things that have happened here in the physical world are actually the biggest manifestations in my life. And sometimes you forget about that because you don't always connect with people who that's normal. I'm like, oh yeah, my stepdad is literally with me every single step at like second of the day. And sometimes when I see him around or feel him around, or my cousin or whatever, it's like, um, I know you're here, I know you're helping. But I think just normalizing that is really important. So when I specifically meditate, I like channel mostly my spirit guides and I write down, I say, I need help with this. Can you help? And then it's almost like chicken scratch. It's like, yes. And it's like everything's super fast. And it's like, yes, 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 we're here. And it was, and so like sometimes I'm super connected with spirit. Sometimes it's hard for me. And so like I think it's about being patient and finding your own flows. But that's something I'm definitely like so interested in. Mediumship, psychic, like, and even again having this relationship with God in like a church environment, but then also being so connected to like spirit, whether I asked to or not. It just caused so much friction. But now that I've given myself so much permission, I'm just receiving in all different types of levels, and I'm so grateful.
That's amazing. So when you're saying like your form of meditation is just sitting down and kind of journaling or channeling or asking for help through the vehicle of a pen and paper.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes it's different. Like I like to kind of write things down before I close my eyes. So that way, when I do close my eyes, I kind of, you know, you're just listening. And it's never XYZ. Sometimes I get annoyed because I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do today? And then my spirit guides will show me washing the dishes. And I'm like, no, you didn't, bro. You know what I mean? And then it's like, but that to me will be like, okay, you need to focus on the day to day. You think that you're supposed to, go do this, or I'll see myself watching TV, or I'll see myself like driving somewhere. Like I went to my grandma's house and I ate sunflower seeds. So my spirit told me to do this. It's like not always like this big monumental thing. And I think that's when I get frustrated because I'm like, I can't control it. But just kind of having that general question before I close my eyes and just sit um, helps get more clarity. So when I am listening, I'm like kind of conscious of like what's coming up. But my favorite thing that came up most recently was I was really stressed out about taxes and getting a W 2. And I was like, I don't know how to do these W 2s. And I just heard, I think it was QuickBooks. And I was like, QuickBook. And it was like, QuickBook. And I was like, no, I need help. And I was just like forcing it. And then when I got logged into my computer and I realized that my QuickBooks kept the W 2, they did
Oh,
it for me. So, like,
crazy.
things like that just give me even chills now because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry you didn't listen. I'm sorry I'm mad.
I love that. What is a non-negotiable habit that you created for yourself to, ensure that you feel connected and like in peace?
Yeah. Oh, my little light just turned off. My non-negotiable is always writing. Specifically for me, is writing.
Right? Hmm.
Like even before I was conscious, I always wrote everything down. I used to draw a lot. So like just writing down my thoughts, writing down like gratitude. Like when I have an amazing day, I write everything down because I'm like, holy crap, I'm gonna look back on this day and remember how good it is, but I won't remember the details. So it's almost like my gratitude. It's also like helps me get a lot of stuff off my chest. It helps me be super conscious of any blocks that I do have. Um, and again, a lot of times our subconscious is manifesting something, but like if you don't know what it is, I feel like the best way that you can really tap into that is writing because that's number one. I mean, number one way I have personally connected with my subconscious helps me get whatever out. But also just talking too. So like the podcast would probably be the second way that I've really done that. But non-negotiable every single day is writing and then also moving my body.
I love that. What is one manifestation that you're really, really proud of, that you've, you know, that you intentionally manifested?
Gosh. I think my apartment was my favorite thing in the whole entire world. I mean, just always physical places has always been my favorite. So each place that I lived in, it was always like, but my last apartment in San Diego, my dream spot, I think that was my favorite simply because I was living by myself, my first time ever living just alone. And um, I was paying like my budget. I like to talk about numbers because if I don't, then it kind of that not just doesn't discredit it, but it shows you where my belief was. So at the previous apartment I was at, we were paying $2,600. So $1,300 each for two, like for the two of us. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna get my own apartment, but I want something bougie. And obviously my budget was kind of like somewhere near where I was just paying. So I was like, okay, maybe max like $2,000. That was like scary for me because of that $700 job. And then I seen this apartment that was here in or there in San Diego. And when I walk in there, whole body is just like buzzing. You're just excited. You feel bougie. Oh, it's 222, as I'm saying. And my body's buzzing. And kid you not, like I go in there and like their whole website was done because they were actually switching companies. I had no idea because I tried to do it online, but it wouldn't let me. So I went in there and they scheduled me for like a viewing right then and there. Their whole website was down, so none of the applications that were getting like pushed were getting seen. So I was like first ahead of everybody. So that was crazy. And then we go to see this apartment and we go to like, I think it was like maybe the 11th floor or something. And I look to the left and there's this huge hummingbird, like a picture of a hummingbird. And that's like my cousin, Jana. That's her sign for me. I was, I was already buzzing. And then I get to the door and there's a penny right outside the door. And the guy, I kid you not, he has no idea what to do. And he goes, hey, look at that. Money finds you. I said, no, you didn't, bro. And then we get into the apartment and it was, you kind of get this feeling like your body feels warm and it feels like you're coming home. Because sometimes I come into places and I feel empty. So I want to really note that. And I have a podcast episode about that too, of like tuning in. And then I actually signed, or no, I didn't sign anything. I was just like, okay, let me start the manifestation process. How much would I need to get in? The deposit was $500, which was such a manifestation because everything else was like double. But the apartment that I was looking at was around just a little bit over, I think it was like 2,300. And then I let it go. I was like, I'm gonna fill my application. I'm super nervous about my credit. Like, what am I gonna say? Am I gonna get approved? And I was kind of in the mindset that I wasn't gonna get approved for it because proof of income and there's just so much limiting belief. And I'll never forget when I was sitting by the pool and I got the email that I got approved. And I was like, holy guacamole. And but the thing was is that it wasn't the apartment that I originally looked at. It was actually more. It was actually $3,000. Actually, I think it was like right under 3,000. So then I had another opportunity. Okay, now that I got over that fear, now what do I do? And so I just kept listening to my intuition, and it was so scary. I just want to be so vocal about that because I have to let everyone know that I was like, okay. And the money manifested literally the day before. Like, I had to get everything in, and it was so late. And in the podcast, I talk more about like, even when I got in the apartment, I had so much more challenges. But I was just so grateful that I followed through. So, like, every day that I was waking up to this beautiful sunrise of San Diego, this all of these windows, I was like, ah, That was really hard, but I'm glad I did it, you know?
I love that story. And just circling back to something we mentioned earlier about intuition, and because you talked about, pivoting from makeup artist to coach, but also the moving cities thing. So, like when you moved from you're in New York City, is
Hmm.
that right? Yeah. So when you were in San Diego, and did you feel like a knowing or a calling, or like was there any choice between two cities, or like how did that go?
Well, actually, like San Diego was exciting for me, like an opportunity to live there, but it was never like, I need to live there. New York has always been, I need to live here. I belong here. I have a past life here. Um, so when I got to New York, I just loved everything about it. I was like, I love all the crazy people. I love how crowded it is. I love how awkward the subway is. Like, you just have to embrace all of it too. So I think you also just really shift your identity each place that you go. Like, I definitely shifted so much when I moved to New York, but I also shifted when I was in Virginia and then I was in San Diego. So I think it's like more about really being super conscious and aware of like where you feel a calling to, and like when you get there, like be so open but also adapt to the culture. Like in New York I was like so scared I'm going to be hustle bustle, I don't want to get stuck in the masculine energy. But once you kind of let that go, one, you realize it's just a limiting belief, but two, you're also like embrace it and you're like, wow, I didn't know I could do so much. You know what I mean? Like people stay up late there, they work all throughout the night, and I'm like working till like, writing stuff till 3 a.m. And I'm like, I'm so cool. It just makes you feel like a different version of yourself.
That's so cool. So could you share a book that changed your life along the journey?
I have so many books. Hmm. Okay. Well, the number one I always have to recommend is the You Are a Badass at making
Jen
yeah,
Sincero?
You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. So that book
Mm.
has, in chapter 5, there's a story about Anita. Like in the book, she uses Anita, and I went to her book tour, so I
Oh,
got to
cool.
meet her. So that was crazy. So that one is always my
Wow.
number one. Um, but I also really love books that are not to do with self-development too.
Okay,
Is
yeah.
he on your head? Oh, I
No, he's on the show.
He's a girl or boy?
That's a
Oh,
boy.
that was so funny. He looked like he was a hat. So I also genuinely love. There's an author. Her name is Lucy Foley. Do you know her? No. Okay.
No.
She doesn't write spiritual or anything, but I just think when I kind of get outside of the box of only reading self-development too, it also opens me up to like different forms of like communicating and stuff like that too. So I would like her as a writer if you like thriller, good stories. It's really fun.
Cool. That's awesome. Love that. Okay, so final question is what is something that you learned along your spiritual journey that you would want other people to know?
I think just how to feel my emotions or process my emotions and not fight them. So I think that's the biggest thing. But also of like when things are quote unquote going wrong. But again, I personally get excited, and I've really consciously taught that, but like genuinely made this huge kind of movement of people who are like, oh, my car just broke down. There's a lot of money coming to me, stuff like that. And I'm very grateful for that in my own journey, but also excited that I can kind of be that example for other people.
Beautiful. So if people want to work with you, join your program, find you, where can they do all of that?
So the podcast is the Manifesting Money podcast. And then our platforms, the best place to reach me is Instagram. So if you're listening to this right now and you resonate with something, just screenshot and message me on Instagram. Tell me one thing that resonated with you. Because I like to kind of see where people are. Because there's so many different people. Like I've been in a position where I'm like, holy crap, I really want to invest in myself, but I'm like so scared just now starting. So I serve a lot of those people. and that's kind of where my main focus is. And then there's the people who are um, just who are aware, they're conscious, but they want to take it to like the next level and really incorporate the habit. So the 13 Days of Abundance is a program that I created for those people. But again, just message me on Instagram and then I can really see where you're at. And it just kind of helps really give you that undivided attention too. So I understand that I won't be able to do that all my life.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and saying yes to being on the Divine Hangout. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation and I appreciate you so
Yeah, I
much.
appreciate you. Thank you for being consistent and reaching out and showing up for yourself. I also really love your background. It's so cute.
Thank you. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.